I'm really pleased to be here today because today is actually the 1-year anniversary of our last crowdsourcing project, which was using Twitter to crowdsource OER on to teach the Battle of Arras. But that's a completely different project. If you want to find out some more about it, I have tweeted about it this morning at KT Digital. What I'm going to talk to you today is about the Oxford Community Collection Model, which is a model that brings together online collection and face-to-face engagement, and it's been successfully used to create digital user-generated collections for use in academia since 2008. The majority of the projects they have run have been along the theme of the First World War, although we have done projects in other areas as well. But I'll mostly be talking about our First World War projects today and how they have progressed. But as with most things to do with the First World War, our experience with this historical conflict actually started with poetry. Back in 2004, we developed an online archive of the poetical manuscripts, the letters, photographs, personal documents of the famous British war poet Wilfred Owen. These were items that were held in the English Faculty Library here in Oxford, some in the Bodleian, there was some in the British Library, and quite a lot of materials in Texas. And we digitised these materials and brought them together into one online archive. Everything was freely available for use in teaching and research, and we actually created some of the first e-learning tutorials for English literature, for which we won an award for. 10 years later, about 2005, the archive started to look very dated. You can imagine how HTML looked back in looked back in 1994. It was 1994 we launched this archive. And we'd had a lot of requests for other poets. So we had this big collection on Wilfred Owen, but people were saying, where's Edward Thomas? Where's Siegfried Sassoon? Where are the women poets? What about the ones who survived, like Robert Graves, etc.? And we received a grant from the Joint Information Systems Committee to create what is now the First World War Poetry Digital Archive, which contains the poetical manuscripts, letters, correspondence, diaries, photographs relating to about 10 different British war poets. Whilst we were working with the poetry, we had a lot of requests for a bigger contextual library around these materials. So it's not all about the poetry, it's also about the history of the war. And we had a small collection of items that we'd sourced from the Imperial War Museum, photographs, video footage, audio. They were very expensive to digitise. We couldn't afford to do many. I think we had a selection of about 300. And so we thought, how can we actually grow this archive of contextual materials? And we'd always have people telling us, whenever we told them we were doing something on the First World War, I have my grandfather's diary, I have my grandmother's photograph album, she was a nurse in this hospital. And everybody we met seemed to have some connection with the First World War. We thought, well, what will happen if we just try it out? If we ask the public to digitise what they have in their bottom drawers and their attics and contribute it online to build our contextual archive for us. The initiative was called the Great War Archive. We ran it over 12 weeks in 2008, March, April, May. We created a very simple online website where users could enter information about the materials that they had and attach digital scans or digital photographs of any documents. They could also attach things like Word files if they'd done transcriptions, or PDFs, or even audio files. There was no login. We didn't ask people to create a user account. We didn't have that kind of security on the site. We didn't want to create any barriers to people contributing. So we had this website, and then we thought, well, actually, a lot of the people who hold stuff are more of the elderly generations, the first generations of the people who actually experienced the First World War. We don't want to cut them out of this public engagement initiative. So alongside the online contribution website, we also ran a series of roadshows around the country. And these were, I think we did 6. Started off in Oxford as a trial, and we did one in Norfolk, we did one in Hull, we did one at Carmarthen in Wales, up in Scotland, Shetland Lions ran their own. And what happened at these roadshows was that the members of the general public were bringing their stuff, their artefacts, in plastic carrier bags usually. When the free bus pass picked in, they'd be queuing up at the library doors, the museum doors, wherever we're hosting the roadshow. We would have experts from the University of Oxford, experts from the local university there as well, to be able to talk to them about what they had. It was very Antiques Roadshow. If you've ever seen the Antiques Roadshow, it's exactly like that. But the only difference is that we would take the items away from them for about an hour, and we would scan them and we'd digitise them. We'd collect all the information on the form, or they could type it in themselves, and we'd contribute it to the archive for them. So it was a good mixture of online and offline engagement. in 12 weeks, we received 6,500 items. Out of those 6,500 items, none of them were inappropriate, not one. There was one that we dismissed because it was from the wrong war, but that was it. And we thought this was the thing we were most nervous about, was getting inappropriate content into a University of Oxford archive. And we did have a QA system, so everything got approved before it went live. But we got nothing, and seeing as we had no security on the site, maybe we were lucky, but who knows. And just an example of some of the things we had a lot of photographs. But what was interesting about the photographs wasn't the actual physical object itself, it was the story behind them. It was the intangible history, the memories, the oral history of the people in the photographs. And also some of the photographs had the history etched on them, like you can see down here in the bottom corner. These are photographs with a bullet hole through them that had been sent back to a mourning wife after her husband was killed in action. We had diaries, completely unpublished diaries and memoirs. This one over here is from Gallipoli, a stretcher bearer in Gallipoli who recounts what happened every day. And in the back of the notebook, he actually listed all his friends he went out with and crossed them off one by one. It's really moving to be able to see that. At the top here, we have what's called a signal. And signals were messages that were sent back from the front lines back to the commanding officers who were further back. This one was sent on the 11th of November 1918 at 11 o'clock, saying hostilities had ceased. This was just kept in someone's bureau, in someone's house. It wasn't in a museum anywhere. And the story behind this very interesting tin is that this is a tin that not only protected someone from a bullet, you can see he's kept the shrapnel, he's got the tin, but he also carried it with him when he was shot down by the Red Baron. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it's a great story behind it. So in 12 weeks, we felt we had managed to achieve a very successful archive. And what was interesting, because we were running a very traditional digitisation project alongside it, where we were digitising items from major libraries in the UK and abroad, we could compare the costs of doing this. And we worked out that the images we were digitising from the major libraries were coming in at about £40 an image, and that was including the cataloguing, the post-processing, all of that. The images and the items we were getting in through the Great War Archive after getting 6,500 was coming in at £3.50 per image. So we were really harnessing the power of the crowd to actually do the digitisation and the cataloguing for us. Okay, the project success, our funders, JISC, funded us again to run a project overview whereby we would train other projects in developing community collections. We developed a model for doing this, an ABC of crowdsourcing community collections, which was aimed for two-way engagement, so make sure that you actually are giving something back to the people who are contributing, and I'll come more onto that in a moment when I talk about impact, because after all, this is a conference on impacts. Be part of your community, move where your audiences are moving. Make sure you're reaching out to them in the right places. For example, at our road shows, we knew that getting articles in The Guardian wasn't really going to help getting people to our road shows. It was getting articles in the Daily Star, the local Daily Star. Is what would get people through the door. And challenge your assumptions. Just as Stuart was saying, it's very much about handing over some control to other people and just letting them create these archives. Something else we did during this project is we wanted to see if the community collection would work with a completely different subject and completely different types of material. And we set up something called Project World Horde, and this is a community collection to collect artifacts, information, teaching, and especially teaching resources to support the teaching and learning of Old English and Anglo-Saxon Britain. And again, in just a few months, we received 4,500 items from about 400 different people. Now, this is a very specialist, niche subject. It's quite different from the First World War. I think a lot of people still a very close connection with the First World War. Anglo-Saxon Britain's much further ago. But what was interesting in this project, we also had museums contributing their things as well. And everything to this project was contributed under a Creative Commons license as well. So everything in there can be reused in teaching and learning for non-commercial purposes. And some of the stuff we had is we had like whole sort of character appraisals of people in like Beowulf, and also lost TV footage that teachers have been trying to get hold of for years, and someone just happened to have it, they digitised it and contributed it to World Horde, and everyone was really happy about that. And it is an open collection, so it's still accepting contributions. It's a small enough niche crowd who are contributing that we can manage this on a day-to-day, but the English faculty can manage this on a day-to-day basis. As we were nearing the end of Run Coco, we started a project called Astha Weltkrieg. This was because Europeana Digital Libraries had found out what we were doing, and they said, well, Great War Archive, really interesting in the UK. Everyone's really interested in the First World War in the UK. Try it in another country, and we'll see if we can get funding to do the whole of Europe. Try it in Germany. And we were a bit nervous about this. The First World War isn't really talked about much in Germany. There is nothing like the Imperial War Museum where you can have that conversation about the First World War and hand your stuff over to for safekeeping. And we were very nervous about Oxford University going into Germany and talking about the First World War. So it was advertised quite differently. It was called the First World War and Everyday Documents rather than the Great War and things. It was about family life, really. And we did exactly the same model. We developed the software that we developed for the Great War Archive. We improved and enhanced, put it on Europeana's server, and we ran it over 6 months. We did 8 roadshows, and in that time we collected 20,000 items. It was absolutely astronomical. It turned out people really did want to talk about the First World War, and they came. Munich was one of our biggest roadshows ever, and hundreds of visitors came to that roadshows with their stuff. We had to turn people away. And of course there was the online archive as well, and anybody, anywhere in the world could contribute to that as well. And just as an example, one of the most interesting documents that we got through, I mean, this postcard, if you can read German, may not seem very interesting at a first glance. It's about a commander an officer who's been sent back from the front line for dental treatment. He's been injured and he's just about to go back to the front, and he's really excited about going back to the front. When you look closely at it, you realise it's from a 27-year-old Adolf Hitler. And this, again, had been kept in someone's personal collection. I believe they've now sold the postcard, but we now have this in our archive. And researchers are very interested in it because it gives a bit of an insight into that man, and he's excited to go back to the front. And this was something that the press sort of leaped on. Okay, so that is success. We did get funding through Europeana and with the British Library to run Europeana 1914 to 1918, the community collection aspect of that. Through this programme, we are providing training to run the actual face-to-face engagement roadshows. We're providing digitisation training, how to do digitisation cheaply but still achieve high quality. When you're in a roadshow situation, you can't wait 5 minutes for something to scan. You've got to take it very quickly, so our model is very much based on the use of digital cameras rather than scanners, for example. We offer hands-on support and floor management, so if all the different countries we're working with don't have the right resources there, we'll go there and actually physically help them. And again, we've adapted and developed our software to make it more robust. It now has a front end, and it has a much better administration interface, and it has that security built in where you need to set up an account. This is available open source, by the way, so anybody can use this software. And here's an example of some of the actual road shows. So as you can see, it does look quite Antiques Roadshow-like, but what's interesting about the road shows is actually tying in some of the other stuff around it. So we get reenactors coming to the road shows to engage people. We have exhibitions from local military museums, local regimental museums, the British Legion, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission in this country. And there's a lot of discussion, all the experts, people actually finding out about what they actually have, and of course a lot of press coverage. How am I doing for time? Okay, good. And this is what happens behind the scenes. So people bring in their stuff, they engage in all this talk about their stuff, they get interviewed, they get talked to by the press, it's particularly interesting. And during that time, their stuff gets taken away to these back rooms, and this is where the digitisation crew will be sitting. And as you can see, a lot of it is kind of ghetto digitisation. We've got pop-up studios, we've got not the most expensive lights, we've got portable copy stands, but they work a treat, and we get really high quality digitisation. And what we hope to do is be able to train much smaller cultural heritage organisations and be able to use this equipment so they can get started in digitisation and join that movement. Okay, and these are the countries we've done so far. So we did the UK with Great War Archive, and we've done a couple more roadshows since then. We haven't done the UK though, I just want to stress that. The first project was a pilot project. We've done a couple more roadshows in Banbury and Preston since then. We would love to do the UK on a bigger scale. There's so much more there to have. We've been to Germany, we've been to Denmark, we've been to Belgium, we've been to Italy, we've been to Cyprus, and we're going to Romania and we're going to France, and there's about 6 or 7 other countries who want to get involved as well. The way the funding works is that the ministries match some of the European Union's funding, so it's a case of sort of like sending it to them and getting them to come in. And to date, we have 60,000 plus items in this archive. This is 60,000 things that no researcher has ever seen before. It's been hidden from research, and suddenly there's this great resource to be able to tap into. We've run 48 roadshows. There's been over 4,000 visitors to the roadshows, 2,500 online contributors. Okay, so what does this all mean? Fascinating as this is, what use does this eclectic collection actually have, and what outcome does this Oxford Community Collection model actually have for people, for heritage, for academic work, for education? And it's going to be difficult for us to assess this right now. There's a very important anniversary of the First World War coming up. We're reaching the 100-year anniversary, 2014 to 2018. And it's over that time that this archive is really going to be used. But we definitely have some indicators of impact. So I'm just going to work through some of those. And these are just examples. For each one of these, we have 20 more. Okay, I'm going to show you, let's see if we, right, this involves sound and video, so you never know how that's going to work. Here we are.
The National Library says it had an absolutely extraordinary and overwhelming response today to its First World War memorabilia roadshow. More than 600 visitors brought along photographs, letters and other family treasures to today's event, which proved to be 3 times as popular as previous roadshows in Germany and Luxembourg and in the UK.
Pick a story, any story.
I have here 2 diaries of my great uncle.
Where Selena was underwater in my mother's bedroom.
Put simply, there were hundreds of tales to tell here.
It's absolutely extraordinary material. Family stories, a wonderful helmet that came through with a story attached to it.
This is the helmet of William Andrews. In the Battle of the Somme, he was wearing this helmet when he was hit by shrapnel. As he was being stretchered off, some soldier was about to throw the helmet away as being useless. And my grandfather said to him, "Hold on, give me that. That saved my life. I want to show it to my grandchildren."
Items such as the helmet would be catalogued.
If that had been an inch or 2 lower, we wouldn't exist.
And then photographed to become part of an online European archive of private stories from World War I.
It was quite incredible having the modern day descendants and relatives of that helmet, the helmet in particular, as they're saying themselves, a couple of inches here, one way or the other, and the 2 people sitting in front of me might not be here today to actually tell me the story itself.
To be able to now share it is something we always wanted to do, but never really had the wherewithal to do it. We didn't want to give it away, but to have it digitized and put online is the perfect way of sharing it.
And after all, to share his story is what William Andrews wanted all those years ago. Philip Bromwell, RTE News, Dublin.
That worked fine. Great. So, when people come to our roadshows and they hear about the project, they don't really understand why someone from the University of Oxford or whatever local university it is that is supporting the roadshow, why they would be interested in their great-grandfather's helmet or the set of photographs they have or just an oral history that they have in their family. And when we explain to them this really is a unique historical record, it may be a photograph, it may be a diary, it may be a set of lessons, but they contain information not previously known, I think they start to understand the importance of it. When we explain to them we are reaching a very critical point in how the First World War is viewed, the most obvious event, 2014, and also we have just passed the death of the last surviving veteran from the war, we know this is also a dangerous period and that the war may pass out of ownership by the people, and these memories, artefacts, items, diaries, photographs, they're at risk of being lost forever unless someone preserves it, and we are giving them an avenue to actually contribute. So this is the two-way engagement. We're giving people sort of the reason to contribute whatever they have within their family. Okay, and some other ways people are getting information about it. This item was submitted to us online for the Great War Archive. This is William Gaunt, the gentleman sitting at the front here, and it was submitted by his great-nephew. When they took it out of the frame to be digitised, they sort of played around with it on the scanner and they zoomed in. And what they saw written in the mud down here was Emma. And they'd never been able to see this on the photograph with the naked eye. This had sat on William's widow's mantelpiece since he was killed in 1917, and she'd never seen Emma etched into the mud. He was sending her a message. And they said without this project, they would never have known that that was there. Some other examples. Okay, this up in the top, we have a picture of a family reunion at the anniversary of a village war memorial. The parish who had organised this war memorial could not find information about one man on the memorial, private coal. They found that information in our Great War Archive. They contacted the person who had contributed that information, who was actually in France. They rallied the family together and they all managed to go to the service. And there were items from the Great War Archive that were read out in the service as well. There was a poem, they read out a letter. And they would never have been to that service unless it had been to the Great War Archive. An example here in this photograph, the gentleman sat at the bottom far right. He was a stretcher bearer and a bandsman in the Royal West Surreys. And he changed regiments in 1917, and very, very shortly, just a few days after he changed regiments, he went missing in action. He was never found, unfortunately. But because he'd only just gone missing, he'd only just joined, his paperwork was never processed. And unlike many men, there's no memorial to this man on one of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission memorials. So the only memorial to him is in our Great War Archive, and the family feel that's very important and that they can share his story via another archive. And the matchbox at the bottom here, this was thrown out of a train window by a soldier who was passing his town on way down to Dover. And inside the matchbox there was a little message to his family who lived in that town, and it was actually taken to them. And unfortunately, he was killed shortly after reaching front. I'm saying all the sad stories here, aren't I? There are happy ones. There's just in this archive, there's so many happy stories, and that's something we forget about wartime. It's not all about death. People did survive. But this matchbox went into the archive. We love this story, so it's one we put on our blog and things. And then a few months later on our blog came this. And this matchbox was actually contributed from Australia, the person's family in Australia. And someone had found this story and said, actually, I'm related to him. I never knew about this matchbox. And we put the family in contact and they started talking about it and they've met up. And that's a great outcome. Okay, how am I doing for time now? Another 5 minutes, okay. I'm going to show you just one of these because it really does, I think it really brings it home. The community collection model is about bringing face-to-face engagement with online collection, but there's a series of other activities around that, grassroots activities that really embed this model and make it important for people. Objects unite us with our past in a way that many other things don't. And we did some outreach in Banbury, and this was with a school. Before the big roadshow that we had in Banbury a few weeks before, we asked school children to go home and ask their parents about what objects they might have in their families and to bring them in and talk to us about them. So let's see that one. All right, and it's halfway.
I'm Thomas, and I'm from Leicester.
I'm just going to speed this along a bit to the second half. So he's brought in what's called a Mary tin. These were given to soldiers by the Queen in 1914. It might be 50. I don't know my facts, but they contained tobacco and chocolate, and it was a gift for their service, Christmas present. And this little boy has one, and he's brought it in to show us.
As soon as you open it, I'm not sure what that says at the top actually. It sounds like Imperium Family Club. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what that means. British Empire. Yeah, and then if you open it, it's got the sort of dented quite a bit.
Yes, you can see here. Yeah. It's still quite well preserved.
It is, yeah.
You can really read everything and so on.
Yeah, it survived 4 years. It survived 98 years.
And nearly 100 after that.
Yeah, it's been handed down to me.
And it's it's yours.
Yeah, it's been handed down to me for a few years now. I didn't exactly understand. When I got it, when I first got it, I didn't really understand what it was.
But now you know.
Yeah, for about a few weeks ago, my nan explained it to me.
Yeah.
So I could find, because obviously it's getting close to 100 years since it sort of happened, and like sort of when we are not forced into battle now, but as they were now, I mean. But my great granddad here, he got all his medals. I think my great granddad who in this one, he got the white feather cowardice. So he only got 2 of the medals. He didn't get the 14 to 15 star, because he backed down for about a year. Then he went into the war.
So he didn't join up immediately.
He joined up about 6 months after.
Yeah. And survived the war.
Yeah.
Did you know what he did in the war?
I think he was a colonel when at the time he died. I'm Thomas, and I'm from Blessed George Napier School here in Banbury.
So he has a bit of a cobbled history. But I just love it. I love it. Just a Meryton, it's probably one of the most common things we get in through our roadshows. Each one has a different story, and each one means something different to the person who contributed it. And it doesn't just connect with the older generations. You can use these objects to connect with younger, and that's why these kinds of collections are so important for schools. Right, I'm moving quickly on to research and then ending. Just 2 minutes. Okay, so in terms of what the public give to Oxford University, other than a great collection of stuff, they give to us information. For example, this is a bus ticket that came in through the Great War Archive for leave on London Transport. We catalogued it, went online. We got an email. I've been to your website, I've looked at this bus ticket, it's not the First World War. So this person has such a specialist knowledge of bus tickets, he knows it's not from the First World War. So we're like, okay, we'll go and have a look at the cataloguing record and you know, we'll make the changes. We checked it with a military history expert and he agreed and all that. And we went to the cataloguing record. It had been contributed by the Bodleian Library. Sorry, Bodleian and the people who are here. But it just goes to show that the niche specialisms within the general public really can add something to academic information. And it should not be ignored, especially sort of like military history. I've been working with the First World War for a long time, and the people in the public who are experts in military history, family history, they know more than me. I won't pretend to know anything about, as much as them, about battle tactics, etc. After the Great War Archive, because it had to close, so the online collection's there, but we couldn't collect any more contributions, we didn't have the funding to, we opened up a Flickr group just to see what would happen if we invited people to contribute their photographs to Flickr instead of via the University of Oxford. It has about 6,000 photographs in it now, which is great. But the comments that you're getting on Flickr are really interesting as well. I think just shows the potential of having user commenting and tagging. And here's someone's put up a photograph, and they don't know much about William Henry Patrick, who's their family member in the photograph. And someone who knows how to access the right databases has found out all that information, told him where he was, what he's doing, where the photograph was taken, which is just information this person didn't have before. Okay, and in education, because all these items are, in Europeana, they're CC BY, so they can be used with attribution by anyone for any purpose. And that just opens up a wealth of material for education. With the First World War, we're trying to move away from that idea that it was all about a Tommy in the trench and that everyone survived, went mad or wrote poetry. We're trying to get away from that traditional thinking and show that it was a global conflict. The military engagements happened as far as China and as far as Chile. It wasn't just based around the Western Front. And when you make all these photographs available, then suddenly you can start doing things like pinning them on maps, you can bring them into new learning resources, and we've just created a new open educational resource called World War I Centenary Continuations and Beginnings, which has been, again, another crowdsourcing project. We're asking academics to contribute unpublished articles, blog posts, information, to build a resource for teaching new perspectives on the First World War. And if you search for something like medals now in Europeana, you don't just come up with the British medals, you come up with medals from every single country that we have been to, and also ones that have been submitted online from outside those countries. Anybody can use it. And last slide. So just to finish, we're not just to prove we're not just about the First World War. Our next project is supporting Europeana in 1989, which is about the fall of the Berlin Wall. So these are the same people we've worked with on 1914 to 1918, but completely different subject matter. It has interesting copyright implications because it's not. There's more stuff you can sort of, first of all, you can class it as being out of copyright. But again, they want to use the same license, and I think this will be a really interesting, much more political archive, and we'll see how that goes. But they're so good on our community collection model now that we've trained them all, and that we're just offering advice on this rather than actually getting to go and do it. But that's kind of what we aim to do.
I'm sure there are lots of questions, and I should warn you that Kate won't be here this afternoon, so this is your only opportunity to claim her expertise.
Thank you very much for your talk. I've heard about this.
I recognise you.
It's really fantastic. I'm very interested in learning more about findability. Your audience is very general, which generally means that you have to have more metadata to describe the object. And you have so many items within the collection. How, if you're using crowdsourced metadata, how do you authenticate that metadata and make sure it's exhaustive enough so that people can find the objects?
Mm-hmm. There's some certain things we use. So we do use set fields. That we have a box which they can just type into whatever they want. That's the story. That's the description. But we have set fields and sort of like placing, if you know where the object's from, placing it on a map so we get the geo coordinates and you can get all that data. And we use the Imperial War Museum's keywords as well. So it took us a long time to find the right keyword list, to be honest, because it doesn't quite fit user-generated content, but that seems to be the one that's going to be used mostly with other archives on the First World War. There's going to be a lot of archives on the First World War coming around, so we chose that one. You can't capture everything, and that's something you may have to give up in your challenging your assumptions, but we felt like capturing enough is enough for this project. Capturing something is better than letting it be lost forever, and we've tried to follow standards as well as we can, and we can export all our metadata into lots of different formats, and it is discoverable in other archives as well. And I think that's very important. It doesn't just exist in one place, it becomes interoperable with other systems, and other places can harvest.
Other questions?
You said your information was CC BY.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant, well done. Question I was going to ask you though is, the last person in World War I has only just died, and the copyright law is actually 70 years after their death. How are you handling the microscopic chance that somebody might actually sue you for copyright of World War I?
Well, we do have permission forms people have to sign when they contribute things, either at a roadshow or online. So it's not just they submit it; they have to say, "I have the right to let you license it under this." They retain the copyright, it's their thing, but they license it for distribution as a CC BY. We have had a couple of occasions where someone's contributed something and then some distant family member has got in touch and said, actually, that should rightly be mine. And there's obviously been some conflict there somewhere. You don't really want to get into that. And you just take it down. And that's only happened once or twice. And a couple of times at roadshows, someone's taken their thing away rather than contribute it when they understand the license, but literally a handful of times. No, they're mostly volunteers. So volunteers from universities, volunteers from whatever the equivalent of the local Western Front Association was, local history groups. We had a couple of experts on our team that if we were short of experts on a roadshow, we could pay them to bring them in for the day. So we had that added resource. That's something that our service provides if needed. But we mostly helped heritage organisations, museums, libraries, etc. use their volunteer base and how they could use their volunteer base to find experts and bring them in.
A question about the creative found, are those images, objects still protected, or is there the risk that, you know, if there's the takeovers of some social media companies, they can then take those images and information and do something you perhaps wouldn't want them to do?
Well, first of all, I mean, there's three points to that question, actually. First of all, one of the reasons we keep getting funding to do these things is because we have very strong preservation and archiving and hosting solutions here at the university, and it's unlikely we're going to go bust, you know. So we write into our funding bids to maintain these things for as long as possible as the technology, really. And then we do what we did with the Poetry Archive, and we migrate it over to a new technology that we will develop ourselves or get from somewhere else. So that kind of aspect's unlikely. With the Flickr group, we made a big mistake with the Flickr group, and we didn't ask people to put things in with a specific license. We said you can just put things in under any license you want, and that means it's now up to the individual user to find if they can reuse it in their teaching, learning, research, whatever. And we should have specified it has to be under this open license. So we don't, for us, and we work a lot with OER, we don't find that we don't use that resource as much as we could, which is a shame. And the third point, in terms of actual licensing, now I'm not an expert on Creative Commons, and I'm sure there's other people in this room who are more an expert than me, but the way I believe it is, if you can change a license or something if you wanted to, but if someone downloaded and used that item under the license it was on before, then they can continue doing that. I think that's the way it works. But we don't. We have an institutional policy on Creative Commons and things like that, so it's guided by people much higher up than I am.
Groups like Facebook, where they, unless you've actually copyrighted everything that's on there, and even when you do, you're not always protected, and they can say they own the intellectual property. So I just wondered how you get around those issues. But
well, we say anything contributed to our official archives has to be under this license. That's the way it works. And we don't use a mixture of license because we believe that makes it more difficult for the end user to use the resources. Yeah.
I'll take the last question if it's very quick.
How do you select the institutional partners in the countries where a project takes you? You mentioned France, Romania. And also a second question regarding the 1989 project. Will that only going to cover Berlin or also the other Eastern Central Europe?
I believe 1989 is going to cover everywhere, and it's going to have an online collection as well, so anybody can contribute. You don't have to be in Germany or Eastern European country. In terms of selecting partners for Europeana 1914 to 18, that's done more by our Europeana partner than Oxford. We provide the training, we provide the model, we provide the digitisation support, all of that kind of crowdsourcing expertise, we provide all that. Europeana, the way it works is we got a bunch of money from the European Union, which funds a big chunk of it, and then individual countries do matched funding if they want the project to go in and run roadshows. And I'm not quite sure how they actually choose the venues in the countries, because they are a bit random sometimes. But we've been to like medieval forts, we've been to national libraries. I'm not quite sure. I think it's usually the equivalent of the Ministry of Culture that puts out the feelers and finds those.
Okay, I think we're going to have to leave it
Sure.
there.
I'll be around over lunch a bit, so if anybody wants to talk to me, then please do.
Thanks very much, and thanks again, Kate, for the presentation.